What's going on? YouTube, listen up. Young Elder Gang. This is Charles P. Winston at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe and share this video. Fam, I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history definitions, scripture, information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning. The truth, keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it. Today, be sure to hit that like button, Young Elder Gang, hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, hit that bell, and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. The shadowy network of drug trafficking that the Nazi government established in Eastern Europe was one of the most secretive and lucrative operations in history. Its origins are shrouded in mystery, but some sources claim that it began during the Polish-German War of 1923-1924, a brief but bloody conflict that resulted from Polish attempt to topple Hitler while claiming ethnic Polish territories not granted by the Treaty of Versailles. According to some accounts, the trafficking network and the crack cocaine that fueled it were invented by a pro-German guerrilla group known as Werwolf, who fought against the Polish occupation near the city of Königshütte. The Werwolf were notorious for their equipment, which they acquired not from the German army, but from their own illicit activities. The Werwolf initially stole and sold all kinds of goods to finance their operations, but they soon focused on trading in cigarettes, alcohol, and most importantly, cocaine. Werwolf was cooking up a crack Strom, in German quiet literate. As the Polish-German War dragged on, the Werwolf militia found themselves running low on funds and resources. They devised a way to make their cocaine supply last longer and generate more profits. They mixed it with baking soda, water and other substances and cooked it into a smokable rock form. This was the birth of crack cocaine, a highly addictive and potent drug that would have devastating effects on both the Polish and German populations. The Werwolf used their crack cocaine to both fund their resistance and undermine the Polish authority. They sold the drug to villages and small towns near the front lines, creating a large and desperate market of addicts who would do anything to get their next fix. The Werwolf also distributed the drug to Polish soldiers and officers, hoping to weaken their morale and discipline. A regime like Nazi Germany might use a powerful and highly addictive substance like crack cocaine against dissidents to achieve several malicious objectives, leveraging the drug's known physiological and psychological effects. The crack cocaine epidemic caused more damage to the Polish lines than the Werwolf's direct attacks, as it eroded the social fabric and the public order of the occupied territories. When the war ended in January 1924, with Germany losing important lands to the Polish, the Werwolf retreated to the Third Reich's borders, leaving behind a trail of chaos and misery. Their drug network collapsed as the supply of crack cocaine dried up and the demand skyrocketed. Many chronically addicted civilians, both Polish and German, scrambled to buy the last remnants of the drug that the cities had, resulting in riots, looting, violence and crime. The most notorious example was the riot of Benzin, where thousands of crackheads ransacked houses and businesses to get their hands on the remaining drug supplies that the Werwolf had left on the Polish side of the border. The effects of the drug were not missed by the German government, who saw it as a potential weapon of war against the enemies of the Reich. They decided to study the tactics and the chemistry of the werewolf and to replicate their network of narcotic trafficking on a larger scale. They believed that this would be a self-sustaining and profitable operation, as the drug would both finance their military campaigns and demoralize their opponents. The man who was put in charge of this operation was Wolfram Post, the leader of the original Werewolf guerrilla. He had proven himself to be a cunning and ruthless leader who had managed to keep his group alive and active throughout the war. He was given access to state-owned facilities to mass-produce crack cocaine, and he became the mastermind behind the most profitable military operation in contemporary history. To expand their production, the Third Reich reached out to Liberia in Africa with the proposal of a 99-year lease of 1 million acres of land in their country in May of 1924. The official reason for the land lease was to extract rubber for the German industry. But in reality, several coca leaf plantations were built in secret across the Liberian rainforest. The climate was almost ideal for the leaf cultivation, save the high variation in temperature that lacks in regions like Colombia or Bolivia. But with careful selection and care, the farmers were able to produce a decent yield. The man who Wolfram Post sent to oversee the plantations in Liberia was Simon Gunther, another member of the original Werewolf militia, who acted as his lieutenant during the days of war. He was responsible for smuggling the coca leaves and the cocaine paste to Germany, disguised as shipments of rubber. He also had to deal with the local authorities and international investigators who posed a threat to his operation. Militaries using drugs to control populations and soldiers, as well as the historical actions of the Nazi regime. Wolfram Post himself oversaw the manufacturing of the drugs in Germany, with entire black sites dedicated to the creation of crack with unprecedented efficiency. His operation grew so fast and profitable that he was able to invest in research and development to create new and more potent drugs. Wolfram Post experimented with different ingredients and methods, such as adding methamphetamine, heroin, or LSD to the crack, or injecting it directly into the bloodstream. He also tested his drugs on human subjects, mostly prisoners of war, political dissidents, or ethnic minorities, to observe their effects and side effects. Wolfram Post's drug empire soon became a powerful and influential force within the Nazi regime, as he supplied high-quality drugs to the high-ranking officials, the military elite, and the loyal supporters of the Führer. He also exported his drugs to other countries other than Poland, nations the Führer pointed as direct enemies of Germany, while he was forbidden to sell his products in other nations and for the German population itself. He became the richest man of the Nazi inner circle, and contrary to what he showed to his peers, he did not intend to stop his expansion, eagerly awaiting the next nation his Führer would allow him to prey upon. Hitler's regime used crack cocaine against the Polish for several strategic and malicious reasons. These possibilities would align with historical patterns of chemical warfare, psychological manipulation, and political subjugation, though they are entirely speculative and not based on historical fact, to destabilize Polish society and create dependency. By intentionally flooding Polish civilian areas with a highly addictive and destructive drug, the regime could foster widespread addiction that would cripple Polish society, turning a healthy population into a dependent one, erode the social fabric by creating chaos, desperation and crime, making the population easier to control and govern. subvert Polish authorities by overwhelming them with crime and social issues, diverting their resources away from resisting the occupation. To weaken the Polish resistance, offering or distributing crack cocaine to Polish soldiers and officers could be a tactic too. Undermine military discipline and morale by impairing their judgment and physical health. Create chaos and distrust within the ranks by introducing drug-related crime and instability, making coordinated resistance difficult. To fund covert operations. Nazi Germany could use a drug network too. Generate illicit income from the sale of the drug to finance resistance movements, sabotage, or other clandestine activities. Establish a self-sustaining operation that could continue its efforts without relying on funding from the central government, as a means of psychological warfare. The use of such a destructive substance could be part of a broader campaign of psychological terror meant to instill fear and despair in the Polish population, demonstrating the regime's brutality and willingness to use unconventional methods. Break the will of the people to resist by creating an atmosphere of hopelessness and addiction, as a form of chemical warfare. Though a departure from conventional chemical weapons, distributing crack cocaine could be a fictionalized version of an insidious chemical warfare attack designed to target the civilian population and inflict long-term damage on the health and vitality of the conquered people. Serve as a non-conventional weapon to achieve military and political objectives without the overt use of bombs or gas. Psychological breakdown. The intense and short-lived euphoria of crack cocaine is followed by a severe, demoralizing crash. A regime could use this cycle to deliberately induce psychological instability in dissidents, making them more pliable and easier to control. Intense addiction. The highly addictive nature of crack would ensure the dissidents' dependency on their captors for a supply. This would render them controllable and neutralize them as a political threat, as their primary focus would become satisfying their addiction. To use in coercive interrogations. Create a truth drug. Nazi doctors experimented with various drugs, including mescaline, in an attempt to develop a truth serum for interrogating prisoners. In a hypothetical scenario, crack could be used as a stimulant to elicit a state of disinhibition during questioning, or its effects could be combined with a depressant in a speedball to create a disoriented and vulnerable state, making the subject susceptible to manipulation. Coercion and blackmail. The regime could use a person's addiction to crack cocaine as a form of blackmail. Dissidents could be offered the drug in exchange for information or public recantations of their political beliefs, to publicly discredit opponents. Character assassination. A totalitarian regime relies on portraying its opponents as weak, immoral, and degenerate. By intentionally getting dissidents addicted to crack cocaine, the regime could then expose their drug use to the public. This would not only destroy the dissidents' reputation and credibility, but also serve as a warning to others. Justify harsh policies. High-profile cases of dissident drug addiction could be used to justify a broader crackdown on undesirable groups, painting drug use as a problem that must be stamped out and demonizing the political opposition in the process. To conduct inhumane medical experiments. Experimentation. The Nazi regime was notorious for its unethical and deadly medical experiments on concentration camp prisoners. A hypothetical program involving crack cocaine would be consistent with this history. A regime could use dissidents as test subjects to study the drug's effects, test interrogation techniques, or see how long a person can be kept active under its influence. Developing drugs for warfare. In a similar vein to the real Dean Wang's experiment on concentration camp prisoners, which included cocaine, a regime could test crack on dissidents to develop new stimulant compounds for soldiers. The goal would be to push the limits of human endurance and aggression in combat, to exploit for labour. Enhanced labour. The intense energy boost from a stimulant could be exploited to temporarily force dissidents to work beyond normal human limits in labour camps. After the inevitable crash, the prisoners would need more of the drug to continue working, creating a self-perpetuating system of forced labour and addiction. Hitler to use freebase cocaine against dissidents, as historical records and expert analyses have established that the drug was used by Hitler himself and not as a weapon against others. Historical context and drug use. Personal drug use. According to historian Norman Ohler in Blitzed, drugs in Nazi Germany. Hitler relied heavily on a cocktail of drugs, including cocaine, opioids and methamphetamine, to sustain himself during the later years of the war. He is reported to have received cocaine treatments from his personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, particularly after the July 1944 assassination attempt. Purpose of use. Hitler used these drugs to boost his confidence, maintain high energy levels, and compensate for his deteriorating physical and mental health. He did not distribute or use them as a means of control or torture against political opponents. Methods of oppression. Historical evidence indicates that the Nazi regime's methods for suppressing dissidents and maintaining control were based on brutal systemic violence and imprisonment, not drug use. These methods included political imprisonment and concentration camps. Dissidents, political opponents and other perceived enemies of the state were sent to concentration camps, where they were subjected to forced labour, starvation and extermination. Terror and intimidation. The Gestapo, secret police, and the SS used widespread surveillance, torture, and public executions to create an atmosphere of fear and silence dissent. Propaganda and indoctrination. The Nazi regime controlled all forms of media to promote its ideology and demonize its opponents, turning public opinion against those who challenged the party line.